I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be back. We're back doing a matchup. It feels good. It feels like we're gonna, get our momentum back. It's gonna be great. New theme. Love starting on a new theme. But I'm sure the Tough Cut boys know the biggest news dropped over D23. Our boy,
the Queen's dead, baby.
Oh, wait. The Queen might be dead, but the King lives in James Marsden. He's coming back in his role for Enchanted 2, Disenchanted.
I saw Disenchanted, yeah.
James Marsden looks better than ever, hot as hell, fresh off his Oscar-winning performance in Sonic.
Honestly, fucking unreasonable that he looked like the whole cast are like
no, they
20
look
years
good.
Older, and James Marsden is just like
exactly the same. He's ageless.
Which is impressive.
I just figured you got, like, James Marsden. I don't even care that he's not in any of our movies that we pitch for long movies. Make Sonic 5 hours. Sonic 3 5 hours. I just got to give the shout out to James Marsden. And honestly, it looks fun.
Yeah, it does look pretty fun. Honestly, James Marsden and Elijah Wood could be brothers.
Elijah Wood?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Lord of the Rings.
Uh-huh. Both of them don't age.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot my job. Hello, and
I know, Matthew was just kind of typing away, and I was like, well,
Guess Jake and I are going to vamp for a little while.
Guess we'll riff. Hello and welcome back. We're the Tough Cut Podcast. And I'm Matthew.
I thought you were going to do more of an intro. I'm Alex. I was taking a drink of water.
And I'm Jakers.
And this is part one of our long movies bracket. Yeah. So all these movies are really long.
Hey, don't steal my job. It's my job to explain what the bracket is. This is the long bracket. These movies are long.
Nice. Coming at you in today's episode, we've got Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, Extended Edition versus The Batman. And then in the second half, we've got RRR versus The Wailing. So it should be a lot of fun today.
What's the over-under? What are the odds that people watch these movies that are like what's going to be the retention on this theme, do you think? Do you think people are going to be super gung-ho, or do you think...
I think people will come for the conversation. They will not watch along with us. They might be like, I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I'm going to rewatch those.
Yeah.
There's a much higher buy-in to...
So we really got to bring the content here. This has to be our funniest content because we know that they're not watching these movies.
They're not watching with us unless I think we can plead with them to watch along with us, I feel like there are people who, like Matt said, will watch the Lord of the Rings with us because they've seen them before, they love them.
And Rings of Power came out.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's topical. I like it. Maybe we can get them to watch that way. Either way, we're gonna spoiler warning. We're gonna be spoiling these movies.
Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning, and just if you do decide to watch these movies, just a little content warning. Like some of these get there's a lot of racial stuff that happens. If you're particularly sensitive to racial injustice and stuff that it happens in RRR, it happens in The Wailing. Keep an eye out for that. There's some animal cruelty in The Wailing. I guess technically RRR, but it's kind of badass. Not the cruel, not the cruelty.
Different.
It's very different. It's tonally very different.
Totally.
They also do a disclaimer at the front that's I guess they do it in both actually.
At the front, it's insane. Yeah, the RRR has a long paragraph at the beginning of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to it, but yes, it is very different.
Yeah, very different vibe.
Yeah. With that though, we're starting off on the other side of the bracket. Alex, would you like to go ahead and introduce Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, the Extended Edition?
Yeah, absolutely. Frodo and Sam and the gang are back and better than ever, except they're worse because they're all split up and everyone is unhappy. Frodo and Sam get joined by a gangly little guy named Gollum/Smeagol, and they're going towards Mordor. Merry and Pippin are stolen by orcs, so Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are chasing after them. Merry and Pippin escape. They're hanging out with some trees and they go fight Saruman. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas go and save Rohan, but then they go to Helm's Deep to defend against Saruman's orc attack, and they get saved by some elves, and then the riders come in and they kick orc ass. This actually might be my favorite Lord of the Rings movie.
Okay.
Which is so weird to think about, right? Because normally middle movies in trilogies are kind of not the best. They're usually just setting up the finale. But I feel like this one has such a good climax in Helm's Deep. It's so satisfying, all the stories and arcs that everyone is on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the extended edition is really important for this movie in particular because I feel like you get so much good backstory about the new places you're in, about the new characters you're meeting. Like, Faramir is a million times better in the extended edition than he is in the regular edition. Like, it is crazy how much better the like narrative is in the extended edition version of this movie compared to the regular one. But what do you guys think about this movie?
Yeah, so growing up, the Two
congrats.
Towers, I'm going to physically bite you.
I'm sorry.
Growing up, the Two Towers was probably my favorite of the Lord of the Rings movies as a kid. I won't spoil what is my favorite as an adult. It may still be.
Is it the third Hobbit movie?
Yes. Oh my God. When you get those armies in there.
How many are there?
There's a whole lot of them.
Isn't it like 5?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, it's a battle of 5 armies.
Cool. Oh, yeah.
The wolves.
The wolves are my favorite army.
Yeah, it's true. And it's really, really incredible getting the opportunity to kind of sit down and like fully rewatch the Lord of the Rings trilogy for this bracket. Yeah. And how this series in particular deals with its second movie. It is a transitory movie in some senses, linking Fellowship and Return of the King. But yet, as Alex kind of alluded to or talked about, it still manages to have so many complete arcs all within that sort of transitory period, which is really, really cool. I think this is a fantastic movie, a very long movie with the extended edition. It's
a long one,
movie nonetheless.
It's a long one.
Yeah.
So it fits the criteria.
Yeah, it does.
Fits the criteria. Look, we just got to say it up front. They won't know this, audience, because this releases, ahead of time, but we record these at a time. Isn't it kind of funny? We're recording the Two Towers episode on 9/11.
Oh God.
Jake, no.
I'm sorry. It had to be said. Jake. Look, it had to be said. It had to be said. I cannot, you guys kept saying Two Towers, and I'm like, why is that, really hitting me extra hard today? You keep saying that. And I literally just almost said, yeah, we watched Lord of the Rings, The Twin Towers extended edition today.
God, that really puts the scene where the guy is carrying the bomb into Helm's Deep in a whole new light.
Yikes.
Christ.
Yeah, it just had to be said. I'm sorry. It had to, legally, my contract is fulfilled now. I feel good about what I'm doing going forward. No, this movie is actually my least memorable of the trilogy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. When I rewatched it, I'm like, oh my God, this might be one of my faves.
You don't constantly think about Legolas sliding down the stairs on that shield?
Or the way that Legolas jumps his way onto the horse, but he does it the backwards way in that animated shot.
To be
very very, very fair, for a long time, I would confuse all 3 of these movies together because I don't view them as it's hard. All 3 of the movies feel like one movie to me.
A single book.
Yeah, I mean, no, again, this isn't a slide on Two Towers, at all. I just, this one, the details get lost to me. And it's because the first one sets everything up, and so it's I remember that one a lot. And the third one has, spoilers, I guess, for me, one of my least favorite things in the world in it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, dreading that, a lot, actually. So I'm never going to forget that one. No, it's fine.
Sorry, friend.
It's okay. I love y'all, but just keep in mind when we argue for that movie, where I may stand already. But yeah, this one just gets kind of lost. But then rewatching it, I'm like, oh man. I mean, it is good, and the extended version gives a lot. This one's, again, sequels are hard, but this is, I think, a necessary sequel, and the extended version, for what it is a very if you're into this kind of thing, then it's a great thing. If you're not, I could see people being I don't want 4 hours of this. And yeah, that's just where I'm at with it.
Nice. Well, then.
Oh, it's me. I kind of went off me fucking rocker on the long picks because I picked 2 movies that came out this year. That's this and RRR both came out 2022, and I just felt Hollywood goes through these ups and downs of oh, I want longer movies, oh, I want the tight 90 movies, I want shorter, why is everything so long? And I love it when there's a good example of both can be good movies. It's just make a good movie, don't care about the length. It could be short, it could be long, but just make a good movie. And so The Batman 2022, directed by Matt Reeves, I felt was a really good movie. This one is, Matt Reeves' Batman. Robert Pattinson plays the titular character. He ventures into Gotham City's underworld with a killer leaving cryptic clues as the Riddler, and the evidence begins to lead closer and closer to like the scale of Gotham's, underbelly and like the soul of the city kind of things that Batman grasps with. And yeah, it's about abuse of power and corruption. This was a long anticipated film. It's very daunting to do a new Batman movie always because of just what that entails in our media. But I genuinely think they hit it out of the park, and I just have to give them credit for it. A lot of people were like scared of the runtime, a lot of people whatever, blah, 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 but I just think it uses it really well. There are problems with the movie that I can have, but I was just so surprised at how much better it was than I thought it would be. So I'm giving it like its credit and its time under the sun, because I just really enjoyed it. And, it's a longer movie that I just wanted a Batman detective movie, man. But yeah, Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I really liked the Batman. I had seen it before. I saw it when it first came out. Totally agree with you about like getting a true detective story with a Batman movie. I have always loved the like Batman detective comics and the storylines that are much more about like clues and riddles and like actually solving crime and not just like being a crime fighter kind of thing. Yeah, I think it had a lot of really strong connections to like classic Batman stories. And
absolutely.
There are some things that I like have issues with, and I'm sure we'll get into them later. But for the most part, I really like this movie, and I really like how it handles Batman as a character. Matt, what about you?
So this was actually my first time seeing this movie.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I'm glad I can bully you. Like this, my favorite part of the podcast is bullying these guys into watching movies they probably should have seen. Like that's
fair.
Why I do it.
Yeah, at this point I'm just waiting for you to do I can't remember what the movie's called. Never mind.
And as far as what I think of this movie, I feel like I am kind of two worlds on it. I think
okay, Bruce.
It is a fantastic film for the most part. I don't know if it deserves its length. I think it probably could have been cut down by like a half an hour and been a better movie for it. And I normally love like slow burning films. It's just the initial hour of this movie, there are points where it just is crawling in terms of its pace for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, like particularly it's like there's like a 15-minute long opening narration basically of like emo Batman basically journaling, and I just think it I get it's about setting mood and tone. It's just like I get what the Batman is, I get the tone of what you're going for.
And
I think
it's my favorite Batman for that character opening. I think it like perfectly encapsulates like this Batman and like a really, really fun way in a year kind of like 2-3 Batman, the shadow stuff. Like I kind of loved knowing the runtime ahead of time, and like that was a big talking point going into this movie, like knowing that this is like some of the things they took their time with. It just felt to me like they did their research and they wanted to take time with character that the previous iteration rushed. I think like they made it a purposeful to make this movie longer to show you that they want to take care and time with this character rather than have Ben Affleck shout Martha.
But I still think my thing is that we could have accomplished the same thing just in a little bit less time.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of my piece on it because I love the detective stuff. I generally love Robert Pattinson's performance and characterization. I love the emo Batman. I love the saw traps.
You love saw traps. Well, basically, what the main question I want to ask you guys, because I know we got the extended editions in here, and that's kind of a thing where it's like they had a run of this movie that was shorter, and then they did an extended version. Like,
right.
That's going to be like a huge talking point for me to be like, okay, this is the extended edition. Did they have a theatrical eventually? Probably some special.
I'm sure they did.
You know what I mean?
I totally understand that criticism, Jake. But here is what I want to hone in on what Matt said and why I think that it is different from the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Matt thinks that the Batman being 20, 30 minutes shorter could have made it a better movie. I think the extended editions are undoubtedly better movies than the original theatrical releases. Mm-hmm. The stories in them are undoubtedly better. The character development is undoubtedly better. Like, yeah, they're longer. Yeah, there's a lot of establishing shots of mountains. Sure, maybe those could have been cut and it would have been like a more
but doesn't that like get down to like 20, 30-ish minutes if like you cut all that stuff out? I mean, it's because Lord of the Rings is so exponentially like it's longer.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's exponentially longer, but I also think they are undoubtedly better.
Right.
You can't just say like, oh, they have a shorter version like they would have worked as shorter movies, because the longer versions are entirely better, you know?
It's just an interesting like kind of conversation with it, because like if you make an exponentially longer movie, then of course you're going to have some good stuff like in that, and then you can like rationalize it because it is good. Like I'm not hating on the extended version of Two Towers, but if you would have gotten that out, like if you would have taken out 30 minutes and still made it extended, then it's still you know what I mean? And so it's
but I think like there's also something to it where like they wanted to give fans of the movies, the extended editions are not made to be like, oh, this is the actual version of the movie the way the Snyder cut is, you know? Like they are made to be like, okay, you love this movie, we're going to give you everything you want from it. And so they made it into more of a world, more of a bigger thing.
Sure.
And so like, yeah, I get that like for casual viewers, they probably could have cut out all those walking scenes and the like shots of people running and stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that is missing from big action movies of like, oh, well, how'd they get from there to suddenly be in this other room fighting someone else?
Demonstrates
Like,
scale of both the world, demonstrates the like time, a passage of time, things like that. I think it's
a valid criticism. But I also think at the end of the day, for the people that these were made for, it knocks it out of the park.
Real quick, before Matthew, because I do want to hear what you have to say. But I think a big thing, and I want to have this conversation up front, because I know for a fact I love Lord of the Rings, but not as much as you guys do. And I know that the extended version is something that I want to talk about as like a theme going into these long movies, because I don't just want, because I have a feeling, and I don't want it to be the case that it's just like, oh, these are the extended versions, these are like heralded and like whatever for their length, and it's like, yeah, I get it, like they're good. But you made a point, Alex, where you're just saying like, oh, because this movie was made for those people, it's really good. I argue like I'm probably a bigger Batman fan, and like I love the length, and I love what they did with the extra length of those like 20, 30 minutes that maybe could have been taken away, even in my opinion. And I'm like, oh, they made that for us, for the fans. So it's like we're both on the same wavelength with it, but it's just different. Like, does that make sense?
Who it's made for. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I guess I will give you that piece. And one of the big points I was going to call out is when it comes to the specific conversation surrounding the extended editions, I wager, Alex, you have probably read the Lord of the Rings novels.
I have.
Nerd!
I have read them as well. And that is one of the things that I like so much about the extended editions is they are trying to more accurately capture the feelings that the books convey.
100%,
whereas the theatrical versions of the Lord of the Rings movies, they are a more condensed version of that story. You can't cover everything. It's nearly impossible to. Of course, there are still things that end up getting cut. There are still decision making.
Yeah, I mean, even the theatrical's condensed, but they're still long.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even this 4-hour movie has stuff cut that exists in the novels, and I think it's a very fair point when it comes to the Batman. I just think for me personally, I loved basically from like the last 2 hours, I think are fantastic. Once we really get in the thick of like the detective stuff, the like thriller angle, delving into the underbelly of Gotham, I am absolutely here for it. I think they spend so much of that first hour on like tone setting, character establishment, and I almost think it's because I have some familiarity with the character of Batman that I like that stuff less. Because I'm like, I feel like I've seen so much of that before or things adjacent to it before. But I totally get...
Sure, there's a lot of Batman media out there.
I totally get, though, you feeling like that's really important and captures the character better. Because you can probably parse what is different about this portrayal more so than other ones, for example.
Well, and I think that, so I do agree with you in a sense, like what you were saying about the Lord of the Rings, like the extended editions are trying to get more accurate to the books. But I think that's also what the first hour of the Batman is doing. it is trying to give you Batman as character, as this detective, but it is also doing
super comics
accurate, doing so much work to make Gotham, the city itself, a character, which I think maybe other Batman movies have tried to do, but I don't think they've succeeded the same way that this movie does.
Yeah, the Dark Knight trilogy was Chicago.
Yeah,
like you just that's what they gave
I think
you.
like this movie gives you so much character setting to give you the Gotham from the comics, and I think that is super impressive. I totally agree with you, though, that I think the second and third hour of this movie are fantastic. I think one of the reasons that first hour has so much mood setting and tone is because this is the first movie in this new Batman series.
Yeah.
Where,
have to
Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers doesn't have to do that. The Fellowship does a ton of that mood setting and stuff in that beginning. Mm-hmm. Two Towers doesn't have to do that. And so I totally get where you're coming from with that. And I don't know if I think that it's a negative or not. I'm pretty torn about it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where my like comparing these like gets me, because I know that objectively you like Lord of the Rings content more. I like Batman stuff more, and so it's like it's not a slight on these two movies. I don't think the length is their slight. I think it's the preference, which, you know, for some movies that are long, we could hate that they're that long, like, and hate it, like, but. You know, cough Avatar, I hate you, cough, cough. But, you know, it's just, for me, it really feels like, you know, everyone I talk to, granted in my circles, obviously, whatever, there could be bias there. But, like, they like Batman, like, if they really like Batman, they love the length of the movie. And, in the inverse, if they really like Lord of the Rings, like, you're gonna love the extended versions. So, I guess my specific question, because we have all three of them in our bracket, the extended versions, what about Two Towers specifically makes its long version like really, really up there for y'all? Like what brings it over the top? That's like what's gonna really. I'm gonna ask that for each of them, minus the one that I objectively will hate no matter what. I literally said at the top of this, like, it's hard for me to separate all three of them because I think it's one awesome cohesive story.
Yeah, I can directly answer you, Jake. For me, it's the characters. I think specifically Faramir is so much better in this movie. You understand why he is so desperate to get the ring for Rohan, or for Gondor, I apologize. It explains so much about his character, about his distrust, about like what he's trying to do comparatively to the regular version. And then that also bleeds into how he treats Smeagol. This movie, the extended edition, makes Smeagol a tragic character. You don't get that in the other version of this movie, because like you see Smeagol and Frodo like having an actual relationship. Like he actually trusts him in this like really interesting way. You don't get that nearly as much in the other version of this movie. And then you see all of that break when Faramir and his men like take Smeagol. There's that plot. That's like the specific one that's in my head right now. But those stories can be told about every single arc in this movie. I think specifically characters are infinitely better in this movie compared to the other one.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same kind of idea. If you're talking specifically extended edition to the regular version, if you're just generally talking the Two Towers, I think that the Lord of the Rings manages something that's really, really hard to do with the second in a trilogy, is having what is like a thoroughly compelling transitory arc. We know this story is going to have a third part, that there is still a grander evil that we must vanquish, but you can look at the Two Towers as having like its own independent story arc, and it has like its own beginning, middle, end, its own sets of rising actions and falling actions that can be removed from and are independent of, but still build on what's been established in Fellowship of the Ring and lead into the Return of the King really, really nicely.
Yeah. No, and that makes complete sense, but that also it's so tough because we don't have an extended version of the Batman.
Sure.
So we don't know if all of a sudden, if we added an hour to the Batman, if we're going to be like, oh my God, the characters would have been so much better or whatever. Like, we have the benefit of all these extended Lord of the Rings where retroactively we can know and pinpoint the fact that it is long makes it better. And it's easier to pinpoint that because you have a shorter version. Yeah. Where in the Batman, it's a long movie, and that's all we have. And that's why, like, I'm giving as much credit as I am, not to discredit. They're both hard things to do. It's one, hard to make a long movie that's good and just as a long movie. It's another thing to add hours like or a long time to a movie and it be even better.
Yeah. So I want to get into what my main criticism of the Batman is, because I don't know it's something that it could be fixed by being longer. I don't necessarily think more narrative could fix the way that they did this. My biggest criticism is that the movie makes the Riddler have mental illness and the way that it handles it. Because there's got to be a way to do it where, like, historically Batman characters have mental illness. Like, that is why the villains go to Arkham Asylum and not
Arkham
prison.
Asylum.
Like, totally for that. That's super cool. To make the villain a white guy instilling violence with mental illness in today's political climate is, like, very charged, right?
I think some of that's definitely intentional.
Yeah.
I think it's
totally intentional,
yeah.
right? And that is a very delicate thing to do, because you can't just be like, yeah, this guy has mental illness and was involved in these like far right activist, like pro-fascist stuff.
Sure.
You know,
I think
like
it's pro-fascist. It's like pro-demolition of the state.
Yeah, whatever.
Pro-anarchist.
Like, yeah, sure.
Sorry, not to split hairs.
I love having Matthew as our resident. Like, if you get one of those, like,
sorry.
tiny definition wrong, he will correct. I know, I love it. I learn every day.
I just think
every day of my life.
It's like, it's really hard to handle far right, like, message boards and things, but then, like, not
the QAnon stuff.
They didn't talk about how those, like, far right communities prey on people with mental illness. Like, that was not something that they did. And I think that is like a huge missed opportunity. And I don't know that increased runtime would have added to that.
Here's my argument with that, because that's totally fair. And the mental illness like aspect, especially like the white violence, like totally get it. I think you have to also like see the parallel that they're trying to give, especially in this movie, to Bruce Wayne, to Batman. He's a white rich dude who is also kind of like, they're trying to say has also mental illness. They're like, oh, your mother had all these like mental illness stuff. Like they give it like it's historically in the comics. Like you dress up as a bat, you beat all the and it's real. Like you do all this stuff. A really amazing scene to me is when he confronts him at Arkham Asylum, and like Batman's like one stunted by him being like, oh shit, he find me out, but really like he throws like a temper tantrum like to him, like being like, what have you like just like punching glass? Like you're not gonna be able to do shit. Like it's I don't know. I feel like they're also trying to say that. And especially the Riddler was trying to say that, like, you're part of this too. I thought you were on my team. Like,
I thought we were in this together.
No, literally, like, you dress up as a bat, you beat the fuck out of people, and like think you have all this like clout and like privilege.
Yeah,
you're basically me, right? And I think that's what makes it so good. So I kind of like that the Riddler is kind of shown as that, and I don't think they make him a victim, like you said. Like,
no, like I think they should have made some sort of commentary on how those communities prey on people with mental illness, and I feel like they didn't do that because I think they said
it takes advantage. They did because like a Bruce, like they're saying like the rich were taking advantage of these people who weren't like Bruce Wayne was called an orphan, and then Riddler was like, you weren't an orphan, dude. You had a mansion, and also like they're trying to like say, I don't know, like this. So
I think the causal link is running in the other direction. In theory, it could have been more valuable to have the Riddler fall into that path. However, I think he becomes a perpetrator of that path. It becomes pretty clear to me that in the climactic action where you've got all these other dudes dressed up as the Riddler going to shoot up a public event, they have been indoctrinated by his theory and internet postings, etc. And then, like, when they unmask the one guy, they're like, who the fuck are you? Because he's just some guy. Like, to me, that is the causal chain is running in the other direction, that these are just people, you know, that have. But
even going, like, just literally a little bit further, his answer is, I'm vengeance. Yeah. Echoing, he thought he was, like, Batman. Like, they think they're, like, that's the people. Like, they're trying to say that, like, Batman is easily a part of this, too. Easily can be, like, far-right people, all this stuff could like easily just be like, oh, that's my role model. He's beaten the people that he views are bad.
Sure. I mean, it's like,
so they view the people are bad.
The right wing has co-opted the Punisher, who is like in the comics thoroughly fucking anti-cop, but they're like, no, the cops should be like the Punisher and just shoot people dead. either way.
Yeah.
No,
but that's like what I think. Like, I don't see it as a fault. I think they actually do it really well and really like both subtly and not subtly, like with the Batman and Riddler parallel. And that's why I think he's such a great first villain for this Matt Reeves Batman that they're establishing.
Not to cut in, because I'm sure there's more thoughts here, but
no, go for it.
A potentially even bigger concern that Alex, I thought this is what you were going to address, but the fact that the Riddler has 500 followers and the Tough Cut account does not yet have 500 followers across all forms
we
of social
have not
media.
Reached. Yeah, we need to appeal to more incels is what we need to do. We're not incel
with
enough.
That, unfortunately, we're a little over time on this conversation because we got a whole nother matchup to get to. There's so much.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough.
There's so much in this movie that we haven't touched on. Colin Farrell as the Penguin.
Oh. I also feel, there's
it's really good.
It's the tough thing with watching movies. Watching a cumulative 7 hours of movies for this matchup and only having 30 minutes to talk about them.
I mean, look, it's sounding like, I don't know, maybe the format for these long movies could have been we talk about one of these matchups for longer. Because I feel like
super bracket,
we kind of know where we're at. Yeah, super bracket. We kind of know like where we're going, and we think it's like, oh, maybe we're at the point where it's like a personal taste thing. But I feel like if we break it down even more, like I definitely think we're open to that conversation. It's just really, really tough. But hey, they call it the tough cut for a reason. So if we gotta vote,
I mean,
we gotta vote.
I think I'm ready to vote.
Yeah, and hey, audience, if you get us to 500 followers at Tough Cut Pod, maybe we'll do a redux.
Yeah, they sell the ski masks of the Tough Cut.
No, God, no. Not what I meant.
I can start us off voting. I think The Batman's a great movie. I do have that one issue with it, but I think like that's also a very tough issue to deal with, and I don't know how they really could have done it better. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I still think Two Towers Extended Edition is just my kind of ultimate extended edition long movie. It does everything I want it to do. So my vote is going to Lord of the Rings in this matchup.
Yeah, and I can go next. I respect a lot of what the extended editions, of the Two Towers especially, are doing. I just think at the end of the day, I'm more impressed by what the Batman did because it's such a taller tale, and I feel like it has more media scrutiny to get it like perfect because it's Batman, and people already kind of love Lord of the Rings, and then they just gave him more of what they love. So at the end of the day, I'm voting Batman here.
I can finish this off. That's very compelling reasoning.
Thank you,
Jake. However, I just had that one problem with
you fucking bastard. I'm buying followers. No, I'm buying followers right now. Hold on.
But yeah, I love the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers so much, and I wish we could have really dug into these a little bit more. Particularly, I think this conversation may have sold short how I feel about the Batman. I still think it's a fantastic movie. Mm-hmm. I think just like maybe on my personal tastes, as far as how it approaches its own length, I'm not sure it uses it as effectively.
Sure.
With that said, Lord of the Rings Two Towers Extended Edition advances. So let's give a Ave Maria to the Batman.
No. This is not how it was supposed to go. No.
With that,
I had it all planned out.
Sending Jake to Arkham Asylum, and I will introduce the Wailing.
Dude, that's literally what I just did.
Whoa! Directed by Na Hong Jin, released in 2016. The movie follows a bumbling policeman in a small Korean town who investigates a series of mysterious killings and sickness in order to save his daughter. All the while, the film straddles the line on who the true villain is, whether that be a ritualistic shaman, a strange outsider and Japanese recluse, or a ghastly woman in white. So The Wailing is a strange little film. It is one of my favorite modern horror / thriller movies. I think it is fantastically effective at making you think about it. Watching this movie for the first time, I immediately afterward launched into a very, very lengthy discussion, as I'm sure Jake can recall.
Oh yeah.
About this film, its themes, what even happens in the plot to some extent. I really love it, and it's pretty long. So here we are. With that said, Jake, what did you think of this one?
Oh, I mean, look, a little bit of lore for you tough cuties out there. Matthew and I watched this together a couple years back, and this is a true Matthew pick, just through and through, 100%.
Yeah,
And
fair.
here's the thing: Matthew and I usually agree, especially on horror. So I think this is a really fun movie. This is a movie where, like, I think it enhanced it that Matthew and I watched it together, and the people we watched it with talked about it as much as we did afterwards, and that we were all game for it. I feel like if you watch this movie alone, or watch it with people who aren't game for it, and I have a feeling Alex is gonna have whatever. I have a feeling one, you get confused, like a really, really confused, and you're just not gonna enjoy it as much. I feel like this is a social movie, or just a movie for a very specific kind of watcher. It just so happens that I think Matthew and I are that specific type of viewer. So I really like it. Like I would recommend this movie, but I would only recommend it to certain people. But I still think it's a phenomenal movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's fair.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jake, hey Jake, am I one of those people?
You had to watch this movie, and what do you think?
I watched this movie alone on my couch at 9 a.m. on a Thursday.
What better time,
Perfect
baby?
Conditions, as the filmmaker intended.
I thought it was... Yeah, I had a good time with it until the end, actually. Like, I thought that there were some pretty funny, good moments. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm here for it. I get what this movie's doing. And then the end was... just super dissatisfying to me. And maybe I'm sure I watched this movie alone. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I'm sure there are things that went over my head and I didn't understand. But
there's a lot of layers. There's
whole stuff about they're being racist against the Japanese man. Yeah, cool, sick. I'm there for it. Then the Japanese man isn't really the demon. It's this lady in white. I'm like, yeah, cool, sick. I'm there for it. That's the twist. And then it twists back and the Japanese man is actually a demon devil. And it's like, okay, cool. I don't know. I felt like I was super betrayed by this theming of the racism and
that's the point.
Yeah, I'm so excited for Matthew to pop off.
Oh
here.
My gosh!
I don't know. I just
so much I want
to me that was super disappointing. And even if the point was that either that's the twist or something like that, I don't know.
They spend some time talking about that demons can inhabit your body after you die, and then they push the Japanese man to his death, and thus a malevolent spirit comes into his body. Is a potential reading of this film. Is that the correct reading? I don't know. Maybe he was, as Alex is positing, a demon the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's
hard.
That's kind of where I was at. Because if you take my reading, it's super disappointing.
Alex just said that so matter of factly, and Matthew just looks so dejected.
The matter of that just is what it is, right? If you read the movie the way I read it, where the guy was the demon the whole time, and you watched it alone, it didn't talk to anyone about the alternatives of what was up with the movie when you watched it. Pretty disappointing.
There are certain movies, I need to introduce my movie, but I'll just say this one thing. There are certain movies that the filmmakers clearly want to trust their audience a little bit to have multiple readings, obviously. But if they trust them a little too much, which I feel like this film definitely allows you to, you can end up on a path similar to Alex's, where you don't like the movie because you're like, why the fuck would they do that?
I just feel like maybe you need a little context going into this movie that I just didn't have, right? The extent of my knowledge about this movie was it's called The Wailing.
Hey, same baby. A friend of ours had seen it in South Korea, doesn't speak Korean, and said it seemed cool, and then we watched it.
And I thank her every single day for it. So shout out if you're listening. Shout you out. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Go ahead and introduce RRR, and then we'll dive into this.
My second 2022 movie. This is RRR, directed by SS Rajamouli. I'm doing this as its synopsis, because clearly it could be... you could say a lot about this movie. This is what this is what they say. A tale of two legendary revolutionaries and their journey far away from home.
Fuck yeah.
Sick.
That is not a
that
is
absolutely wild that is how Google
and look, it is technically they go on a little bit more. They're after their journey they return home to start fighting back against British colonialists in the 1920s. That still doesn't give you everything this movie gives you. This movie blew me away this year, with the exception of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, this is like one
that
of my
was
top...
the movie. That's the movie
nice.
Jake's gonna make me watch at some point.
I will. I will. It will be in the Oscars bracket next year. Probably, maybe along with this movie, depending. Again,
wait till I say my feelings on it, James.
Yeah, Matthew fucking hates it. Look, this movie, I feel like genuinely has everything for me. It was so exciting. Getting away from like Western cinema, just like full of breath and creativity. It felt like to have an action movie be this way. The fight choreography was insane. The dance choreography was insane. This has one of the best bromances I've ever fucking seen on film. I swear to God. Oh my God. Like, it's just like, and every time, to give credit specifically why I chose it for long movies, is every time I thought the movie was going to end and it didn't, I was
keeps
so
going.
happy with what they added afterwards. I was like, how is this getting better? How is it all? It just, I'm blown away by this film so much. I need to know your thoughts. I couldn't wait a year to pitch this for Oscars. I needed to have you guys watch it now, and it just fit this bracket immediately. So, Matthew, let's hear what you got to say.
Yeah, so I am fucking furious with you, Jake, because I'm pretty sure I said to you I was going to pick this movie for our Oscars bracket next year.
You sure did.
Yeah, and then he put it in long movies. I think this is a fantastic fucking movie.
Yeah.
It does so much right. The thing I want to key into that Jake called out is leaving Western cinema behind to jump into Bollywood with this one and finding that heart for a like spectacle action comedy, like
romance,
nationalism movie. So there's so much going on in this film and it's so much fun. It is just a wild ride from start to finish.
Dude.
I think it's a great movie.
Some of the best character intros ever. My God.
Is there extraordinarily heavy-handed symbolism tied to each character? Symbolism in general?
Get out of here.
With fire and water?
I loved every second of it.
All that? Absolutely. Is it so much fun every time it comes up with a motif and you're like, there's the fire.
The dude reached into a bucket for water and the bucket said fire in it. That's how on the nose they were. And I loved every second of it.
Alex, what about you? Guys, you said it all. This movie slaps. This movie's so good. It is the best version of the unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Oh my God.
It's like just the best dynamic. Them becoming friends immediately.
It blew my mind because
I'm a little torn.
They become friends.
Honestly, that is the one thing that I'm a little torn about because their friendship happens so quickly that like we don't get the like burgeoning friendship. But like I don't know, could this movie be longer? Yeah, probably, and I'd still love all of it. But like, it's so good. This movie is so good.
Immediately I saw the movie and I saw the character interest. And I'm like, those two are gonna fight. They're queuing them up to fight. They're gonna fucking brawl. And then all of a sudden they make them be besties immediately. And I'm like, no, please,
you know where this is going.
No, and then they do it so well. They're skipping next to train tracks, like galloping together.
It is also just in line with all of that incredibly heavy-handed symbolism. They jump over the need for a burgeoning friendship because their friendship is formed over the fire and water, and they are fire and water. While you've got, just to speak to it a little bit, Jake's synopsis. I get why he's doing it that way. Very frustrating because there's like so many elements going on where you've got like one guy who is fire and water. Exactly. He is a Brit employed by the British governor of India to find the other guy who is a tribesman who is looking to get back one of the young girls from his tribe. But it turns out they're both revolutionaries who are seeking a free and independent India to push back the
British
colonizing oppressors.
Should I say that?
And they think they're gonna betray each other and they fight each other, but then they work together, and it's just all so good.
I have a question, guys. Because this immediately struck me when I first saw it and their friendship first formed. Is their friendship like your friendship and Matt is Raja and Jake is Beam?
Well, I mean, that's the right casting for sure. Like,
Am I wrong? Like, they're just like true friendship, skipping on the train tracks, like saving young kids in the water, like
beating the fuck out of anyone.
beating the yeah. Like, I was just like watching this movie. I was just like, oh, that's Matt and Jake the entire time.
So cute.
That's cute as hell.
It was really great.
Are you the tiger then?
Oh hell yeah!
To dive.
No, I'm Raj's fiance.
Okay, here's the thing.
So I'm dancing with you guys at the end.
I watched this. I watched this with Tori, and she literally was like, "Oh, that's your man, but without the Y." With their like whole throuple thing, they're like, "No, that's our man. That's literally we are all together. This is the best throuple. You cannot like the romantic, but also platonic chemistry between these two male leads."
Yeah.
Is so insane. Oh, the wedding dance number just makes me so happy. The not wedding, the party with the suspenders.
Yeah, it's some kind of annual celebration.
Whatever, dude. Insane. And the fact that he like so stops it so he can impress the girl.
It's so good.
He takes the fall for his boy. It's also worth mentioning they're both extraordinarily buff.
Oh my god, they're real
guys,
meaty.
they're so hot.
Yeah,
they're so hot.
It definitely
and they do
amps
makeovers.
Up the film a little bit.
Okay, audience,
that's true.
This is the first time in this bracket that I'm gonna say, and I'll probably say this a couple times, you should watch this movie. It's on Netflix. It is easily accessible. It is called RRR, 3-letter R's. Watch it with the Hindi and the English subtitles. It slaps. It's actually so good. If you're not familiar with Bollywood movies like I am, this movie will rock your socks off.
Yeah, it's awesome. With that said, jumping into...
Yeah, we got to
comparing these, I feel like you would be... Other than the fact that these movies are both long, you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find more different films. Yeah. I suppose they both have a police officer in them.
Mm-hmm. They both tackle the racial, like the very racial, and not like Western racism. Well, no, you have the British like being awful.
No, RRR is definitely the British being racist.
Yeah, I mean, they both have like the racist allegories like set in stone there, which I think is palpable how they approached each of those, like as is like action war route or like the whole like I don't know doing like a horror film. Like a fantastical kind of horror film. Well, fantastical.
And also does date back to not explicitly, I guess, colonial history of the Japanese Empire in Korea and a lot of horrible shit that they did.
What's the timeline for The Wailing? Like, what time period does it take place in?
I think it's approximately present day.
Present day? Okay.
Not like literally, but yeah, they've got cell phones. They're driving modern cars. Right. So where on one side you've got like the extraordinarily heavy-handed symbolism going on in RRR, that's wonderful. Like sometimes when symbolism's so overt, it's like, okay, it's tasteless. I think it manages to they own it in like such the perfect way.
And in a creative way, hand, even if it is like on the fence, like their over-the-top creativity in their sequences, like set pieces, is just like, I don't give a fuck that they're literally spelling this out for me.
I enjoy it still. Please. And then on the other hand, I think the Wailing is much more guarded about what its symbols actually mean, even for the ones that are like the most present or consistent through the film. For example, the baiting of a fish comes up a couple of times. And also, I don't know which translation you guys watched, but there's the line from the shaman where he says the rat has fallen into the trap, and I have heard that line is more accurately translated as something has taken the bait.
Yeah, that I remember us talking about that after the movie. Yeah, there's a bunch of translations.
It's meant to be part of that through line. The Wailing is much less open with like what specifically that symbol means and why it's included, and I think that is par for the course with the film. I think it's something I still manage to appreciate, especially from that kind of conversational aspect of like, who was the actual villain, who was actually possessing the people in this village, forcing them to commit these atrocities. And part of that is because ambiguity plays such a huge role. Even like, what is a dream?
So interesting.
The jumps in time that the film takes. There's so many kind of everything going on to discombobulate the viewer.
It's so hard because Matthew, I don't know if you're like struggling with this as much as I am. Where like I love the ambiguity of the Wailing and how like it plays out and all stuff, but it's a different type of movie where like RR's in your face. There's nothing ambiguous about what's going on, like you're saying. But I think both are done. What they're trying to do, both do really well, in my opinion.
I think, they both succeed at what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's just they're going for very, very different things.
But so, Alex, then how do you think the Wailing succeeds?
No.
And,
like
okay,
so here's my big problem with like the idea that there are like all these many interpretations and like there's all this stuff. They go to the Japanese man's house and he has a bunch of demon stuff in it already, and they hadn't killed him yet. I don't know. I just like don't really buy that interpretation.
So here's then at the end you have the shaman take the photo of the family. Mm-hmm. There's again this through line where they talk about that the people can be possessed post-death, and they can be sort of controlled as a ghastly figure, a zombie, a marionette of it. Mm-hmm. Presumably, the other side's argumentation would be he has all of these things because he is a spiritual protector, as the shaman points out, that he is taking photos of the dead and the people that become ill in order to protect them from further possession. We see when he's doing the ritual with the chickens, he goes back and checks the truck for... I can't remember the fellow's name, Park something. Yeah. And sees that he's gone and is clearly distraught about it. And then he shows up as a zombie later, presumably because his ritual is interrupted.
I think it worked as like a classic, like kind of red herring, like almost double red herring sort of a deal where like, you see the demon stuff, but like it's because they're trying to study it further, like protect. Like I do think you can read that in this film.
I also am not claiming my interpretation is 100% correct either. I think you can go either way. I think either the woman in white, the shaman, the Japanese man, or any combination of the three can all be good or evil. And that, I think, is what the film is kind of going.
But I think that's what makes your interpretation is valid. And I think the length of the movie helps cater to that all three of those have valid reason, like readings. I think if you had less time with any of them, like, it would kind of be more cut and dry. Be like, okay, like you didn't really give me information about the shaman that I needed, or the woman in white that I needed to kind of draw kind of more complex readings. It's kind of like cut and dry, and I don't think this film would have been better off if it was a cut and dry film. I think it still would have been good. I mean, I think it's a well made film, but I think it benefits from its length because it gives you more intel to work with to have those conversations.
It revels in its ambiguity. It gives you more opportunities to parse what is the true story behind all of this.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. And I don't think that The Wailing would be a better movie if it was shorter, right? Like, I don't think that would solve any of the issues that I have with it. I guess my issues come down to I wish it was less ambiguous and came to a more defined answer, which I guess is just more of a, I guess I was never going to like this movie kind of thing. It doesn't have to do with any of that.
Sure.
But I think like in getting back into a comparison of like RRR and how I think length affects these movies. Like, I don't think The Wailing would be worse if it was shorter, but in my reading, I also don't think it would be better. Like, I don't think it would be worse, or I don't think it would be better if it was shorter, but I also don't necessarily think it would be worse. For my reading,
it would come to your same conclusion, essentially.
Yeah. If anything, making it shorter would cut out some of the ambiguity and just make it cut and dry the shitty ending that I initially read. I do think RRR would be significantly worse if it was shorter. They already like speed through all of the stories that they tell, at a crazy pace. So much happens in this movie, and I don't think they could do any of those stories shorter.
It's a very ambitious film with the number of set pieces.
It's ambitious for so many reasons.
Character moments, dance numbers, all of these things that you want to all cram in. Yeah, there is no feasible way you could make that movie shorter without making it much worse.
And look, I've seen also a handful of Bollywood films. It's not just that it's a Bollywood film that they're doing, because there's always like kind of dance numbers or whatever, and like they're always like typically longer. RR genuinely just does it really well. Like everything seems like really warranted. Whenever anything pops up, you're so happy that it does. Like I said, whenever I thought the movie was ending and it didn't, it made it better. Like, I was like, oh my god, they're adding so much. Like, I loved it. I loved all the
So I will
reveals.
say a couple of times I thought it was going to end and it didn't. And at first I was like, oh man, this movie's still going. And then it like gets into what that next arc is.
It
and
wins
I'm like,
you back.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
It wins you back.
Yeah. Something I think is really fascinating. Again, couldn't have two more diametrically opposed films. RRR's protagonists are so qualified and almost too capable at everything they do. They are like literally superhumanly strong.
They survived some wild shit. I for sure thought he was going to die when the tree bark went inside him fully.
Yeah.
And he fought off all those soldiers. And I was just like,
And then on the other hand, the Wailing has a essentially completely incapable protagonist.
Yeah.
He is as incapable or as out of his element as he is cruel in some ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really, really fascinating to kind of look side by side. And also how quickly that ghost problem would have been solved if the boys from RRR just kind of took a little trip.
They would beat the shit out of any demon through the power of friendship.
If the boys from RRR were in the Wailing, it would not be ambiguous. They would know who the real ghost is, and it would be solved in a day.
But here's the thing: it would still be like a
existence.
4-hour movie, but because half of it would be them like frolicking together in the forest, like having a great old time.
Half of it would be them realizing there's a ghost.
Yeah, so I think that's just like such a fun comparison of the characters we're dealing with here. Despite the fact that in RRR they have incomplete information, they're still like consistently fully capable people.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Wailing, again, with that prevailing theme of ambiguity, the main character is probably not even qualified to be the like police sergeant that he is. I think I can't remember if he's a sergeant or a lieutenant. He is constantly tapping other people to do his job for him. He is cowardly. He is vicious at times. He is a complicated character and way out of his depth, just trying to save his daughter and I guess his family's life because of what the implication, what happens in the end.
Yeah.
And I just think that is very, very fascinating to look at, that even characterization is so deeply affected by what these films are going for.
Yeah.
In very fun ways, I think.
It's such a shame because it's such a harder sell to get people to watch The Wailing, but I do think it's such a great movie. But I think the sheer like audacity of RRR and how phenomenal it is just like, it's a no-brainer almost. How I want to applaud so many things about it. Mm-hmm. Whereas The Wailing is, I want to defend if anyone talks shit about it, like I would be like actively angry. Or if someone talks shit about The Wailing, I'll debate about it. Like I'll be like, okay, but here's the thing. But I'll also be like, I get it,
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I very much agree with Alex's recommendation that people should watch RRR. I would openly recommend RRR to most folks. I would not necessarily do the same with The Wailing. I think it's a pretty particular film.
Mm-hmm.
One that I love very deeply, and I'm
so glad it was in
here,
here,
guys.
Yeah,
even if you didn't love it, Alex.
You know what? I'm glad I watched it. I'm expanding my horizons.
Expanding your palette.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we gotta we're gotta gear on here to vote.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do it right now. I'm voting for RRR.
What?
Yeah, my whole thing is there's not enough babies wailing in The Wailing, so I'm voting for RRR. Yeah, that's my vote.
Yeah, that's fair. The Wailing is one of my favorite horror movies of recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
RRR is one of my favorite movies I've seen this year and maybe the past several. It's a great film. So I'm going to vote for RRR, if only to wonder if these two guys have a contract like The Rock and Vin Diesel.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you guys want to know the real reason I couldn't vote for The Wailing? Because the Japanese man has 500 followers.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's it.
We do not. So go follow us on social media at ToughCutPod, where you can catch the announcements for all of our upcoming brackets, much like what's going to be in the second half of Long Movies here.
What?
Coming at you next episode, we've got Lord of the Rings Return of the King Extended Edition versus Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring Extended Edition.
Just 8 hours
and then we've got
movie.
8 hours. Oh my god. Then we've got the Hateful Eight Roadshow Edition versus Barry Lyndon.
Yeah, and
Nice.
Heads up for the Hateful Eight. There's some, again, a lot of violence and a lot of racism. If you are watching that along with us, pretty graphic stuff on both of those ends. So just keep an eye out if that's something that affects you. Yeah. Also follow us on socials at Tough Cut Pod. You know, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. We're gonna update our Letterboxd. I'm gonna say it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
I'm just gonna say it. Hold us all accountable.
Jake, we've got 20 hours of movie to watch. I don't know that this is the week to say we're gonna update our
This
Letterboxd.
is it. This is what I'm gonna spend my time on. All my free time. Just updating Letterboxd.
All his free time. Beyond that, if you enjoyed today's show, rate and review it on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. I'm looking to collect your dirty little reviews in a big old notebook.
He means that. I don't.
And did we succeed in this being premium content for these long ass movies? Maybe. I hope so.
We got that 9/11 joke in there.
Oh
We
my
collectively,
God,
all of us did that.
yeah. You all made that
All
joke.
of us did it. All of us did it.
Cool.
Who should they share today's episode with if they enjoyed it?
I feel like we were set up to fail when Jake brought up 9/11 right before you asked who we should
it's
share
fair.
it with.
You know what? Cut me asking that, and we can just end it on Jake talking about 9/11.
Oh, no!